Hey, what's going on, guys? It is Master RKO again, bringing you another video. Today we are going to be taking a look at Hardpoint. This is going to be more of an intro video, so if you already know a lot about the game type, or just in general, you understand the game type that is normally used in ranked play or league play, then maybe this is a little too basic for you, and maybe a further video where we delve more into strategies and more advanced topics on this may be more suited for you. Excuse me. So, for those who may be new to this game type, we're going to be taking a look at the game type Hardpoint, some of the basic rules, objectives, roles for players, and etc. And really just explain how the game type works and some basic strategies and some basic concepts of it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get down to business for our first introduction video into Hardpoint. Now, Hardpoint is a fairly simple game that can be made very complicated. And if you're in that type of a boat where you're not 100% sure where to go or how to approach things, the game can get very, convoluted. Excuse me again. So, what is Hardpoint, and how do you play it? Well, Hardpoint is a game type where, as described in the first video where we described some of the game types of what might be in league play, and in the last video if you watched, league play is the game type where, as you can see, there is a single point. And that point, normally, in a standard game, would be 1 minute. After that minute is up, it will end on that point and move to another spot on the map. Each point, there is a rotation, and it continues in that same rotation for, at the minimum, 2 to 3 rotations, depending on how long the game takes. Well, what is the objective? There's a point on the map. Well, the objective is, if you want to win, to get inside of the hard point, keep someone in there, and keep the enemies out. So, without sounding too robotic or teachy about this, let's get more into my style. The objective of Hardpoint is to keep one person in the hardpoint at all times. As you can see, when you're inside the hardpoint, your score begins to go up 1 per second. Every second goes by, you get more score. However, if an enemy were to jump in while you were in, it would be considered contested. That means the time on the clock would continue running, but no points would be scored. As you can see, when I get into the hard point, the time on the clock actually stops, allowing you to gather more points and not have to worry about the time running out. As the game continues to go on and forth, you may want to start considering whether it's better to gather points and get closer to the score total, which the winning total is 250 points, or whether you want to play the clock and let the clock run out. Maybe time is ticking down, but you're still in the lead. So contesting or just staying out may be more to benefit you. Now, as you can see, the time is continuing to tick down, and you continue to gather points. And basically, your job is keep the enemy off of the point and keep your teammates on it. As the point continues to move around and things continue to differ with the map layout and the way that you approach each hardpoint, strategies begin to work their way into your gameplay, and they begin to basically form or shape your play style. Basically, as we've said before, the objective is just to get to 250 points, and that's just by staying in the hard point. Seems simple enough, right? You go to the point, you keep people in it, you keep people out, but it can be a little more complicated than that, and here's why. Doing those two jobs consists of a few other things. First of all, it used to be 4v4 and the game was kind of simpler back then, but with 5v5 you're adding another player into the mix, which means you're adding a few more, I guess, wrenches into your plan. So, it may seem a little obvious just to run into a point, get air, stand here, and, put your face into a corner. But it's more difficult than that. Being a player on the point, you're being bombarded by grenades, gunfires everywhere. It can be a hassle, and it can be a little overwhelming, especially if you're a new player. So, how do you go about all this? And how do we know who stays on the point and who stays back? Well, that's where we get more into roles. Now, theoretically, back when there were only 4 players, roles were a little more easier to divvy up. Back when it was 4, you would have a player in the objective, maybe 2, a player watching the objective, and then someone staying all the way back. And we'll get into those here in just a few minutes. With a second player added in, you could have him do either one of those roles or more. But we keep speaking about roles, so let's get more into those and get a little more in depth, I guess. What do these roles do? Well, as the point comes in, the first role that you'll be really more trying to be on the point, get the points, play those objectives, is exactly that, the objective player. Being the objective player means you're always going to be on the point. Your main goal is to be on the hard point. Most of the time, you're not going to see too much time running anywhere else. Point A to point B is your main focus, getting kills in between, but you're not going to be the highest stat line for kills and deaths. You're going to be the highest stat line for objective time, which if you look at the scoreboard, you can see the time setting, and that will continue to go up per second that you are in the point. Now, as you can see, the point rotated after the time ran up. As the objective player, your job would then be to go from one side of the point, or one point, and quickly and effectively run to the next point and hold it. Continuing to hold the positions, watch for people coming in, taking out the 1 or 2 people that may be coming after you, making sure you don't get flanked in the process, which is also helped by your other teammates, but also making sure that the enemies that either are contesting the point or coming your direction just stay out of your way. Now, as you can see, while being in the point, you gain points towards your score streaks. This will also help in the process of gathering aid for yourself and helping. As you can see, I've just earned yet another score streak. And the more you stay in the point, the more points you get, the more score streaks you get, and that can help your teammates outside, but also protect you on the inside. As the objective player, you're really only expected to get maybe 1 or 2 kills per life, and 1 or 2 kills while you're on the point. But you're not going to be the main slayer. In fact, most of the times the players that are the worst at killing are stuck on this job. Now, that doesn't mean this job doesn't mean anything. In fact, you're probably one of the more special rules just because you're the one gaining the points. When you die, someone else from your other roles will jump on the point with you and help, but once you show back up, they will immediately hop off, go back to what they're doing, and you will be right back on that point. Back in your spot, back making sure no one else is coming, and really, the only other job besides being in the hard point is just watching spots. Learning which spots are more popular for people to come from on each area, and also really learning the map rotation. As you can see, there's going to be a couple areas in this hard point alone where people can come from. Most of the time your team is going to be setting up a perimeter to make sure that people can't get to you, which is really one of the key strategies to Hardpoint. As the attacking team, your job is to break through that perimeter, make sure that you can get people in, take out the people on the outside, then work your way inside and do the same. As the defense, say the attacking team is coming from this side in this example, your job is to set up that perimeter, Hold angles that you think people are going to be coming from, making sure flanks aren't going to come to try to break through your defenses, and basically just keep the people out of your hardpoint. But who are those people? Who are defending the people in the objective and making sure that they're not getting there? Well, there are two roles in that category, I guess you could say. One of them is known as the Slayer. And the Slayer is seems to be very self-explanatory, but the Slayer actually has a few jobs. The first one, of course, being to kill anyone coming your direction. You are the perimeter. You are the first wave of defense. You are keeping as many people off of your objective player as possible. As the perimeter player, you're the one roaming the map. Normally, if the objective is around here, this is your area. From here, all the way around through here, maybe not even 10, 20 feet outside of the actual hardpoint. You're killing, at the minimum, 2 to 3 players per life, at least, hopefully. And you're trying to keep as many people out of the hardpoint as possible, or at least lower the numbers that your objective player has to attend to. If you're doing a good job, your objective player will get his 1 to 2 kills per life, but won't be overcrowded by enemies. You'll be peeking enemies and coming through here, seeing them waltz through and getting 2 or 3 and only letting 1 by. Or, if you're a great Slayer, taking them all out in one fell swoop and letting your objective player just stay cozy. A great objective player will basically let his objective, or a great Slayer will let his objective player just bask in the sun, collect points while not really getting too many kills. If you have good objective players, or good Slayers, the objective players will be able to do their job with little to no issues. In a spot like this, maybe, the objective player is just going to stay on the outside and only really hop into the objective if your objective player actually dies. The Slayer may hop in, gather 1 to 2 points, maybe even more. Once the objective player is back into the game, you immediately hop back out and start watching your perimeters. There's going to be at least 2 Slayers in the game, so you're going to be able to watch most of your points, having a couple players in the backside, maybe 1 player watching the back while 1 player is watching your fronts, and making sure that you're not getting flanked or having any shortcuts that can get straight to your objective player. While you're still being the Slayer, you do have to be conscious of where you're at on the map, though. One wrong move, and the players that are supposed to be coming in front of you may respawn behind you and take out your whole team. So, when you are the Slayer, you have to be wary of where you are on the map. And this kind of gets into the actual job role of the next player we're going to be talking about here in a couple seconds. If you're around this area and you're just watching the outside, that's okay. Start to venture too far away, and you'll notice that you're not running into anybody. That's because those players are spawning on the other side of the map now, and you kind of have to watch where you're at on the map. Is there a mini-map that you can look at on this? I don't believe so. I think they took that out. So if you look at the mini-map, you can normally draw about a half-point line somewhere in the map. On a map like Firing Range, normally right about here would be your halfway point going both directions. So kind of think of this corner of the middle tower going both directions as your halfway point. As a Slayer, if you end up going past that halfway point, you can kind of guarantee that the enemy team is going to be behind you, and that's not really good if the point is also behind you. So, being a Slayer, just make sure you keep in mind of where your team is, where your hardpoint is, and where the enemies are spawning. You can push up a little further if you want to try to take out that front line, but just don't push up too far. Sometimes it can get your team in more of a mess than normal, and your job is one of the more important ones, but it's not overly important, I guess, for the lack of a better current term. Where your job is important, sometimes the objective players can pick up the slack, especially if they're better at slang, and the player sitting in the back line can also pick up some extra ones if you don't completely get all of those kills. In turn, your job as a Slayer is to roam the map, kill people before they get to your objective players, cause chaos for their front line so that way they don't have a full focus on your objectives, and make sure that you're gathering all of those sweet, sweet points. Now we get to the last of the final roles, the Anchor. Now, the Anchor has been a term used in competitive Call of Duty for a very long time, but through the jetpack era was never really needed. If you used an Anchor in the jetpack era, you were really just a blurb on the map, and you never really saw anybody. Now that we're back on boots on the ground, and spawn points are much more in dire need due to the not so fast movement anymore, Anchors are your rock. They are your stone. Anchors, your job is to sit near the back of the map, I guess, and hold your spawn points. Stay alive as much as possible, even if it means possibly giving up an objective for a couple seconds, and make sure that you're taking out anybody on the flank. You're normally going to get about 1 to 2 kills every life, maybe more if you're good at your job. But your job is really to just sit back, look, be a cheerleader for your team in some points, and just keep an eye on everything. Say you're an Anchor back here, your job is to take out this back line, which is why most of the Slayers would normally be able to push up further and watch some of the lanes. You're watching these back flanks where maybe you're keeping an eye on here, but you can't see eye here, and you're wanting to make sure that no one flanks through your barn. Or, for instance, say your Slayers are pushed up on this side watching your lanes, and you can watch that final spot. But your main job is to make sure that you're on rotation. The time is running down on your hardpoint, which means that you're not going to be at that hardpoint for much longer. A good Anchor will leave 15 to 10 seconds left on the hardpoint and immediately begin heading over to the next one first. This means that you're able to get to your spot, gather your spawn points on where you need to, which each map will have their select areas, and make sure that you're already at that hardpoint, normally with the objective player, but you'll get here first. The reason you'll get here first is because if you're here first, and your enemy team and your friends die on the last hardpoint due to the enemy team trying to get some scrap points, they'll spawn on you. So for instance, if the enemy team is coming back from there and there's a specified spawn point that you want, maybe you want to be on this side and spawning because there's more cover instead of spawning on that side trying to come through that door, maybe the Anchor might sit a little further back. He might sit more towards this angle here, watching that front door. He may sit up in the 10 building to make sure that you're not getting flanked. Or he may just sit around in this area, keeping an eye on everything. But he's making sure that you're going to get to your next hard point faster and keep the points flowing. Learning the rotations as an Anchor and as an objective player are a key to being very good at this game type. Every map has a specified rotation, and every map has a specified order that those points go in. Most of the time it'll just be referred to as a map rotation or needing to rotate to the next hardpoint. Now, learning those rotations can be very tricky, and remembering them is even harder. Because when you're in the heat of the battle, sometimes you forget. But one wrong rotation or a late rotation can land your team from being in a spot to make that sweet comeback or put a team away and bury them, to giving a team hope and giving them the possible comeback. There have been many games that I've watched that one wrong rotation on a hill that's more favored towards the team that captures it first, it turns the tide of the game and turns the momentum, and it makes the game more stressful, and sometimes that's when mistakes are made. As an example, if you're a Anchor back here, you may rotate on your first death, or you may just immediately run. So with 10 to 15 seconds on this hard point, if you're back here watching, you're going to take the long way. Make your way through here, even if you have to let some people go by or shoot them in the back while they're going towards the hard point. You're going to make sure that you're staying alive this whole time. Try to take out as many people as possible, and then get here. Once your objective player shows up, you roll out. go back to where you're wanting to go, staying as stealthily as possible, and get to your spot that you want to get to. Once you get to that spot, you're going to sit there and always go back to that spot in turn, which then brings me to the final point of these roles. When it comes to learning roles, make sure you're finding specialists that work for those roles. And yeah, sometimes it can take some tedious work to get into, or just playstyle learning. But each role has their own playstyle. Objective players like to play up close and personal, but they're not going to be straight in your face. You're going to be running more SMGs or higher fire rate assault rifles, and you're going to be more laid back and aware. Slayers, you're going to be running more assault rifles, some submachine guns that do higher damage, and sometimes even, for some people, shotguns. Your job is going to be killing everything and everyone at any range that you can possibly get to, so that's going to be your weaponry. So you're going to be more in the face of the enemy at all times. Your kill-to-death ratio will be affected by that, but it will also show that you're doing your job. Anchors, you're going to be using the heavy-hitting ARs, but are going to be more accurate. Basically, the ICR, maybe even a Maddox or a Vapor, they may be your only guns that you use. You may use a sniper rifle as well, depending on where the map is and the anchor points. Anchors are your rock, and they're going to be keeping an eye on everything. So you're not going to be up close into the fight. In fact, you're going to be the farthest away, and sometimes the anchor role can even get boring. But just keep in mind, while you're busy taking a nap, the rest of your team is winning your fight. So when it comes to specialists, think of those who accompany those roles as we go back into the start of our rotation, as you can now see. For instance, if you're an anchor or an objective player, you may want to run Seraph. Now, currently in the CWL Pro League and their playlist, and who knows if that will be the same for League play, Seraph is banned because of her tac respawn, but in normal play, she's good to go. What she does is she allows you to spawn anywhere on the map because of her tac deploy, so you can affect spawns that way. If you're an anchor, you can set one down and have it anchor for you. But right now, because of where she's at and in the ban list, maybe she's not the first to go to, obviously. And because she's out of the game, it means that the person themselves has to be the anchor instead of relying on a piece of equipment. As we look at some of the specialists here, you may look at, especially for the objective players, Ajax is a very good player. He has his 9 bang for entries, and Ballistic Shield to make sure that he can get into that point. Firebreak is also a very good objective role, as you can use his reactor core to defend from the inside, and his purifier to clear out those close ranges. Nomad could also be that way as well. You can watch your back with the mesh mines and the K9 units. And Torque as well, he could also be a very good objective player. With his barricade guarding one end and your razor wire guarding the other, you can really make it hard for that front line to get to you. The Slayer roles, you're going to be looking more in the lines of Battery, who can chuck grenades into certain areas and use war machines to make sure you're not getting anywhere close.
We're close, make it official.
Ruin, who can grav slam groups of people making your way towards the point or into the point to clear them out, and grapple guns to get from one side of the map to the other. And finally, for the anchors, the last few spots, you're going to be looking at either playing Recon, who can get that extra information for your Slayers through sensor darting, and using Vision Pulse to see where flanks are coming from. Prophet, because he's got the Tempest, which is going to be a long-range weapon. You can drop people out of range and use Seeker Mines to watch your back. Or Crash, so that way you can get your heals off for your teammates while they're running around, and drop assault packs for everybody else. However, as the time runs down on this video, so does the time on the hardpoints. Hopefully you are the one in the lead, and as always, we will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching the introduction to Hardpoint. Adios.